David, thank you, and good morning, everyone. For those of you just joining us, I am Paula Ferris. We have breaking news this morning. Aretha Franklin, the Queen of Soul, has passed away at 76 years old, according to the Associated Press. Franklin, the legendary singer of Respect, Natural Woman, and over 100 other charted singles. She was the first woman inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. She had 73 hits that landed in the Billboard Top 100, the most of any woman ever. ABC's Chris Conley has a look back at her incredible life.
With God-given talent and artistry that conveyed emotion like no other, Lady Soul taught the world all it needed to know about respect. Aretha Franklin had the voice of a generation, her generation and your generation, both attuned to the day-to-day and soaringly transcendent.
I think that what she did was allow emotional extravagance to be okay.
With such songs as Think, Aretha electrified her listeners for decades. Her church-bred greatness, inspiring and empowering. First heard on record at 14 years of age in 1956, singing gospel. In her youth, Aretha would learn from such mentors as the great gospel singer Mahalia Jackson and Sam Cooke, who'd tell her, "Sing, girl." Her pop breakthrough came in early 1967 with I Never Loved a Man the Way That I Love You, setting off a series of monumental hits through 1968, among them Chain of Fools. And You Make Me Feel Like a Natural Woman.
You make me feel like a natural woman.
While telling ABC News,
I've still got to find out who and what I really am. I don't know yet. I'm trying to find the answer.
Intimately involved with the sound of her records, Aretha could shine a light at the saddest of times, as in 1968 at Martin Luther King's funeral.
Because when away.
She'd return to the pop charts in the mid-'80s with Jump to It and the buoyant Freeway of Love, a joyful diva feeling the love once more. She'd earned so many honors: the first woman inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 2005, Ivy League honorary degrees, performing at President Obama's inauguration in 2009. Then, in 2015, at the Kennedy Center Honors. Slipping her mink to the floor and flat out owning You Make Me Feel Like a Natural Woman.
God-given talent, indeed. We are going to return to regular programming in parts of the country. That is GMA. We'll have much more on World News tonight. I'm Paula Ferris in New York.
This has been a special report from...
Good morning. I'm Alona Minkowski, and you're watching ABC News Live. We're coming to you with breaking news. Aretha Franklin, the Queen of Soul, has passed away. We've been hearing so many reports for the last couple of days that she had been sick, gravely ill, and that a lot of friends were coming to her bedside to come pay their respects. And so now the reports out this morning are that the Queen of Soul has passed away. And we're going to our local affiliate in Detroit now to see more about the amazing singer and her life.
Concert in Detroit. While she may have passed, Aretha Franklin will always have the key to our hearts. That is certainly a very true statement. And we do have a bit more now on Aretha Franklin and the legacy that she leaves behind in Detroit. She captivated Ford Field back in 2006 when she sang the national anthem at the Super Bowl. But before she did that, Aretha sat down with our Diana Lewis for an interview. She stunningly sang without warming up and mesmerized Deanna and our entire crew.
I'd like for you to just give me a little something. Can we just hear Aretha Franklin, just a little of the national anthem, a spiritual, whatever you would love to just treat
Oh Lord,
our
it's so
audience
early.
with.
I don't know what my voice sounds like really. I usually warm up before I sing.
Better than anyone in the world I
oh
can
my
think
God.
of.
What? Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming?
Ooh, right on, my sister.
Thank you.
God bless you.
Thank you, Diana.
God bless you. Thank
you so much. My pleasure.
Wow, what a moment. Aretha Franklin, always so amazing on stage and off. Detroit would not be the same without our Queen of Soul. Again, if you're just...
We're back here now with ABC News Live. I'm Alona Minkowski, and we're covering the breaking news of Aretha Franklin's death. Joining me now is Mike Muse. He is an anchor on Sirius Radio and a pop culture expert. Mike, good morning to you.
Hey, good morning.
Of course, devastating news here that the Queen of Soul has died. Talk to us about what this woman meant for the world of music.
She meant so many things for the world of music. In particular, Aretha Franklin was the first female to ever have over 100 Billboard titles on the Billboard charts. Aretha Franklin has given us such great music and soundtracks. She provided a great soundtrack from the iconic movie Sparkle that was remade by the great late Whitney Houston. Aretha Franklin was also the first female inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And what was interesting about Aretha Franklin, too, as well, is that we've known her for performing these mesmerizing renditions at President Obama's and other inaugurations. But what's interesting about that, though, was Aretha Franklin's always had a tie to politics. And Aretha Franklin was always known to be singing with the late, great Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And also, too, she performed at his funeral. And so there was always this connection with Aretha Franklin with making history and being an icon and being a voice of the people with her powerful rendition and 4-octave range that she had, and being able to teach herself the art of piano and singing in church growing up. And so there's always been this power and this gift of music. And as you know, music is what unites us. Music what makes us come together. And there was something uniquely special about Aretha and her ability to really use that gift to sit at this intersection of politics and pop culture. And it became really crystallized when, if we can remember, she gave that mesmerizing performance at the Kennedy Center Honors when she sang "You Make Me Feel Like a Woman" as they were honoring Carole King, and Carole was crying, and we saw President Obama crying. And so that was the gift that Aretha is always going to leave behind with us, is her powerful gift of music and her song and her ability to emote and connect with the audience in ways that we would never, ever have with us in our generation.
Yeah, the strength of that voice, one that is recognizable the entire world over, is something that, it will stay with everyone. I think it gives everyone goosebumps anytime an Aretha Franklin song comes on. And as you mentioned, so many milestones hit in her career: 18 Grammys, the first woman in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. She was gifted the Presidential Medal of Freedom. She performed at Obama's first inauguration as well as President Clinton's inauguration. But this tie to politics that you talk about, obviously she had a background in the church through her father. How did that connection come in, especially when we talk about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.?
Well, it's interesting because a lot of the great singers within the African-American community always got their start within the church. And there's something to be said about the connective tissue of getting your start in the church and singing. Whitney Houston, another one of the late greats, got her start in the church. There's a notion with Aretha Franklin being a father and being a reverend, and so naturally she was drawn towards the church and through preaching. And when you really think about it, the civil rights movement really got its start within the church. The church kept the spirit, the civil rights movement going, and the civil rights movement energized through the soundtrack and the singing of hymns to really keep the protesters' spirits and morales up. And so it may from the outside seem unusual, but when you really begin to think about it, it was just such a natural progression for her to be able to partner with Dr. Martin Luther King and to feel comfortable in that space and to really send that rendition going. And we really think about where she comes from in the city of Detroit. There's this statue in the city of this man that represents the spirit of Detroit and this fighting tenacity of Detroit. And that is Detroit at its finest. Detroit is a fighting city. Detroit is a strong city. Detroit is a city that was built on the backs of blue collars. And Detroit was a city that was built really through the black population. And so that spirit of RESPECT really is what that comes from when she sings that rendition. It comes from the spirit of the civil rights movement. It comes from the spirit of the citizens of Detroit, Michigan. And it comes from being within that church and that grandiose of these bishops and these preachers preaching on Sundays and getting the crowd stirred through words. And so she was able to do that through song and through lyrics. And by that way, really helped carry the civil rights movement much further along. And that also, too, be part of her legacy.
And Mike, stay with us. I also just want to bring in Chris Connolly. He is ABC's entertainment reporter. So, Chris, thank you for joining us. And talk to us a little bit about what we do know when it comes to the circumstances surrounding Aretha Franklin's death. It seems like she was very private in her life, and only in the last couple of days were we having reports come out that she was gravely ill.
Yeah, I think throughout her life, she always tried to make sure that the focus was on the music and not so much on her personal life. And I think the last few days of her life indicate that that was the case as well. I'm sure in the days to come, we'll learn more about the last few days of her life. Certainly there were many questions about what her conditions were in the last few years. She seemed to have battled a number of medical situations and parried away attempts by interested journalists to find out more about what was going on with her. But, you know, by the standards of the music business, it is an epic life and one filled with great achievement and certainly a moment for us to look back and marvel at everything she was able to accomplish.
And even in the last few days, when news was coming out that she was gravely ill, we saw an outpouring of support on social media from Beyonce and Jay-Z at their concert that they were giving in Detroit. We heard that Stevie Wonder and others were going to visit her in Detroit to be by her side and to really pay their respects. What else have we been hearing from people when they just talk about what Aretha Franklin has meant to them, how she's influenced and touched them with her music?
She's a foundational figure in popular music of the last 75 years. You would say, I think it's possible to say that after Frank Sinatra, she is the most influential singer of that period. There are so many people who listen to her and wanted to be like her. So from every voice you hear on American Idol or The Voice to, to a great like the late Luther Vandross, to amazing singers like Mary J. Blige, you all know that they come from the great influence of Aretha Franklin. And that's just in music. When you think of her social implications, as we were hearing before, the way she touched people in politics and in society, they were very strong. Bill Clinton on social media talking about him and Hillary, praying for Aretha as well in the last few days. This was a voice that stirred many thoughts, and it felt like a voice that was speaking to you. And when she sang, it was not just about what might be going on in her life, but it was a voice that came from the church. It was a voice that came from the blues. And it seemed to address so many things in culture. It addressed oppression of women, oppression of African Americans. It was, a call to action and a call to, a call, I guess, to get and demand and insist on the respect that she sang about so beautifully.
And 3 of Aretha Franklin's songs are actually currently in the iTunes Top 100. Just when we talk about the influence, the staying power of a woman like Aretha Franklin and the music that she's made, those songs are Respect, Natural Woman, and Say a Little Prayer. Mike, can you talk to us too, place Aretha Franklin for us in the second half of the 20th century, what it meant to be a black woman trying to pave your way and really being at the top of her game in the world of music?
It's really interesting question that you brought up with that. What Aretha was really known for was her identity and knowing who she is and being unapologetic about it, right? If you can recall, just to bring some levity to the conversation that we're having right now, the spirit of her, she would walk out on stage in these amazing furs. Like, she was just known for that. And no matter what the occasion was, no matter what the mood was, Aretha was always known to be in this fur or to be in an amazing outfit or an amazing dress. And then when she would sing, she would just throw it on the ground, right? And be unapologetic about it. And I think as we move into the realm of Black women and this hashtag of Black Girl Magic, and as we also, too, bring it out into the general aspect of feminism and what does it mean to be a feminist and what does it mean for women to own their narrative and to own their identity in this 20th century, in the second half of her life, I think there is no greater example of that than Aretha Franklin, right? To the way she held herself with such confidence, and she didn't care. Sometimes she may miss a note and nobody cared and she didn't care. And I think that confidence that she had was refreshing, right? And to say that you can be your authentic self. So I think for Black women and for women across the world to see that type of persona and to see her own her truth in the way that she did, I think is really what people can take away from her legacy that she lived her life in the second half of her life in the 20th century for people to hear. And the guest has previously mentioned what she meant to music as well, especially within the hip-hop. And even you mentioned Mary J. Blige. There's so many people who have sampled her music, from Outkast to Dr. Dre to Jay Dilla to Cameron to Mos Def. Even Prince did a cover by her. So, the list just goes on and on of individuals who really have reinterpreted her music and reimagined her music. And so even as her music goes on and continues, there will be others that will sample it so that others can still be introduced to her through another generations to come, especially through the lens of hip-hop.
Yeah, the incredible influence that she's had. And, we were just showing images and video of her over and over here. And you talk about the fabulous furs, the costumes that she wore. She was the original diva, right?
Yeah, she was. She was the original diva. And I can recall the conversation when I had the chance to go to the White House through President Obama when they did a special evening for Women of Soul. And I remember Patti LaBelle was there, Ariana Grande was performing, and Aretha was performing. And I remember we had to wait in the transitions through that process as they had a house band to cover it, but Aretha had her own band. And so we would literally have a break so that the house band can go away and Aretha could bring her own band out. And I just love that aspect of it. And nobody didn't mind waiting for Aretha's band to reset because you know what? She deserves the right to have whoever she wants to perform behind her. And when you can tell, those individuals have been with her for years. And so that just goes to the respect level of her, and that goes to her owning her identity, even inside the White House. Like, she makes sure she stays true to herself, and she knows who she is at all times. And it was such a treat to see that behind-the-scenes aspect of it. I think that's something that me and my mother, I was able to bring my mother as a guest. So I actually am originally from Michigan, so I thought it was important for my mom to be there. And that's always a memory that she and I will always share, that we have been talking about a lot in the recent days.
Well, you're a good son, first of all, for bringing your mother to that event. And like you said, such a testament to Aretha Franklin, just demanding excellence, demanding perfection, because she had attained that level and knew that she could. And, Chris, are we getting any other information in this morning? Have we heard anything else from her publicist or from her family?
What I've heard so far is just that the official announcement that she died Thursday. And so I think certainly in the hours and days to come, more will be learned about, so much that she endured, kind of quietly and on her own. The sufferings that she went through later in life. We certainly saw, some changes in her appearance, but she was not the kind of person to sit down and pour out her story to you. She wanted to pour out her life and her music. And when you heard her sing, you heard triumph and joy and freedom. And you heard hard times, and I think that's why people bonded with her and felt like when she sang, they were talking about her. When she sang, her words were about them. They were hearing their lives, spoken about, explored in the beautiful music that she was giving them.
And I actually want to read the statement here that I have from the longtime publicist of Aretha Franklin, from Gwendolyn Quinn. She said, "It is with deep and profound sadness that we announce the passing of Aretha Louise Franklin, the Queen of Soul." Franklin, 76 years, as we said, Franklin was 76 years old when she passed away. And another thing that was said here is, in one of the darkest moments of our lives, we are not able to find the appropriate words to express the pain in our heart. We have lost the matriarch and the rock of our family. The love she had for her children, grandchildren, nieces, nephews, and cousins knew no bounds. And we have been deeply touched by the incredible outpouring of love and support that we have received from close friends, supporters, and fans all around the world. Thank you for your compassion and prayers. We have felt your love for Aretha, and it brings us comfort to know that her legacy will live on. As we grieve, we ask that you respect our privacy during this difficult time. And so that, of course, was the statement put out by Aretha Franklin's publicist, and that's a statement issued by her family, though. And she was surrounded by family and loved ones when she passed at her home in Detroit. That's what we're being told. Again, Mike, as we just talk about Aretha Franklin and the influence that she had, how else do you see? You mentioned Mary J. Blige. You mentioned people sampling her music. What's the next stage for Aretha Franklin and kind of the impact that she had?
I think one of the good impacts of, as we begin to celebrate her life and celebrate her legacy, and as we really begin to look back on all the things that she's accomplished, I'm curious to see who is going to emerge as this next round of iterations of powerful singers using their voice for good, right? I'm thinking about that moment when Aretha Franklin decided to name her, I think it was her 20th album in the 20s, To Be Young, Gifted and Black, after being so moved by Nina Simone's rendition of To Be Young, Gifted and Black. And that shows, again, the connection or correlation between Nina Simone, another individual who used her voice for change and to use her voice to push through narratives of justice and equal rights and civil rights. And then Aretha took on that torch, if you will, and celebrated Nina by naming her album after that. And so I'm looking and curious to see what's going to be the next iteration of that. My guess is that going to come from Andra Day. Andra Day has this unique, powerful voice, such as an Aretha Franklin. And so far, Andra Day has been using narratives of social justice and change and singing for good and singing narratives and songs for good. And so I'm going to be curious to watch this next group of generation of powerful vocalists who recognize responsibility of their gift and also, too, recognize responsibility of their platform. I think today's artists are becoming more aware of their platform and willing to use it for good. That has been created through social media and has been created through the attention they get on television and through the airwaves. And so I think this is going to be a reminder that you do have a responsibility with your voice and with your gift and with your platform to advocate for change, no matter what that change is, whether that change for feminist movement, whether that change is for the LGBTQAI community, or whether that change is for the African American community, or whatever community identity politics you represent. How do you use your voice for that? And I think we're going to learn so much more because, as Chris has mentioned, she has such an incredible discography and body of work for us to look at, to listen to. But as you mentioned, too, as well, the visuals. There's something about the power of visuals, right? And as you scroll the B-roll of her dresses and her outfits, but we also, too, see her in these positions and spaces of power, right? When you're on the Capitol Hill singing for President Obama and singing for President Clinton, and when you are singing for the White House, that's televised by PBS, when you're singing at the Kennedy Center, you see her in places and spaces, and when you see her next to the Reverend Martin Luther King, you can't help but be moved and to recognize the influence that she was able to yield and not ask yourself, what can I do as well? And so I think that is going to be something that we're going to unpack in the days and months and hopefully years to come of this great legacy, because her music is going to live on. It's timeless. It's classic. Her identity, the diva, is going to live on in her. So I think that is going to be something that's going to be the takeaway. And that's actually something I'm going to be watching for, is who has next.
And I just want to reiterate here, I have a statement from the Recording Academy about Aretha Franklin's passing. And just to reiterate, like I said, her incredible success. I mean, we've obviously been speaking about how much further her influence really goes in pushing for change, in helping people realize who they are, and the emotion that's tied with her music. But she also, during her 6-decade career, earned 44 Grammy nominations. She had 18 Grammy awards, and she was recognized by the Recording Academy on several occasions for her remarkable accomplishments as an artist and as a philanthropist. And she was given the Recording Academy Grammy Legend Award in 1991, the Lifetime Achievement Award in 1994, and the 2008 Music Cares Person of the Year. So that statement there from Neil Portnow, the president of the Recording Academy, says that her distinctive sound, her unforgettable recordings, and giving spirit will continue to be celebrated worldwide. Aretha will be dearly missed, and our thoughts go out to her loved ones during this difficult time. I want to bring in Gail Mitchell right now. She's a senior editor at Billboard magazine, who's also joining us. Gail, thanks for being here. And just to kind of piggyback off of what Mike was saying there, that Aretha Franklin, not only with the power of her voice and her music, also often found herself in places that exhibited power. Talk to us about that connection between her music and what was happening in the country politically.
Aretha's voice was very engaging, magnetic. There's so many, adjectives that you can use, but she was there at the forefront, and I think that really began when you look back at her life. Her father was a major influence, and he was a key person in the civil rights movement. I don't know how many people can go back in their lives like Aretha could and remember that some of these people, her father was a very powerful minister there in Detroit, and a lot of the movers and shakers of the civil rights movement and in the musical movement at that time. Growing up, she could go downstairs and they'd be sitting in her house with her dad talking about different things. He was very in the forefront in terms of recording his sermons and putting those out on record and going out and speaking about the movement and about the gospel and all that. So she had that bedrock as a beginning. So naturally, it was a natural connection for her to team up for Martin Luther King and Dr. Martin Luther King and others to work with her, and she spread the word. I heard the prior gentleman speak about the how she paid tribute to Nina Simone, young, gifted, and black. I mean, she just connected. That's the period I grew up in, and it was just her voice. It was, in addition to what was going on in terms of civil rights, she's also feminism with respect and things like Think and getting women to galvanize then and look at how they were being treated and how they wanted to be treated and having a say-so in it, no longer sitting back and not saying anything and just taking the status quo. So, and I recall everybody talks about her kicking the door in with the album I Never Loved a Woman, I Loved a Man, I'm so sorry, The Way I Loved You, and that particular album, which had Respect and all of those breakthrough songs on there. But as I was growing up, I remember her first album from Columbia, and you could just hear the command of her voice then when they thought she was going to be a jazz singer. I think it's Aretha with the Ray Bryant Trio on Columbia. And those songs still resonate today. And you just don't have an artist like Aretha. It will be interesting to see who's got next, because when you look who can go on at at the last minute and sub in for Pavarotti on the Grammys. Who can Aretha-ize a song like she could take over Bridge Over Troubled Water, with no offense to Simon and Garfunkel. She just made it her own. I say a little prayer. Young, Gifted, and Black. I mean, the Punch. And then Amazing Grace. And I'm hoping that maybe one of the next things that we do come see out of her legacy is that long-anticipated documentary, because I think that will also be something for everyone in the country and in the music industry to to look at and see just how commanding she was in basically every genre. You know, you just don't see that today.
And I think everyone will hope for maybe more of an intimate look too, and want to know more about her. But as you said, once Aretha Franklin sang a song, she owned it. It belonged to her, no matter who may have sung it first. Gail, thank you for joining us today. And again, I'm Alona Minkowski. You've been watching ABC News Live with us. We are mourning the death of Aretha Franklin, the Queen of Soul, at 76 years old, but also honoring her life and her legacy and her impact on American music, global music. She is a voice recognized all over the world. And our coverage of Aretha Franklin's death continues. We're going to join our Detroit affiliate, WXYZ, as they cover the death of their hometown hero. But before we go to them, let's listen to Aretha Franklin performing at President Obama's first inauguration in 2009.
But she was thinking about something classy that you see in New York and Chicago and Los Angeles. And so she wanted to see if I could put her in touch with who was then, at that time, the director of the Detroit Economic Growth Corporation, and set up a meeting. And so I was able to give him a call and put them in touch with each other. I don't think it actually worked out for who knows, any number of reasons. But that's the level of commitment that she had and the love for this city, that with all of her accomplishments, that she wasn't just content with all those accolades. She said, I want to do something for the people to keep this legacy of Detroit being the music city. Keep it going.
Says so much more about her too.
Yeah.
And again, Aretha Franklin's publicist released a statement from her family saying, quote, in one of the darkest moments of our lives, we are not able to find the appropriate words to express the pain in our heart. We have lost the matriarch and rock of our family. The love she had for her children, grandchildren, nieces, nephews, and cousins knew no bounds. We have been deeply touched by the incredible outpouring of love and support we have received from close friends, supporters, and fans all around the world. Thank you for your compassion and your prayers. We have felt your love for Aretha, and it brings us comfort to know that her legacy will live on as we grieve. We ask that you respect our privacy during this difficult time.
Yeah. Powerful words.
For sure.
Ken Coleman is a Detroiter. He's on the phone joining us now. Ken Coleman has a love of history for this town, and particularly African American history. He has written several books. He puts out these daily things, which today such and such happened in this city.
Follow his tweets too.
Yeah, and he tweets all the time. He's a good guy. Ken, can you hear us?
Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. How are you doing?
Ken, are you there?
I think we may have just lost Ken.
America, but the world loved her too.
Yeah.
You know, our connection cut out at the beginning, Ken. If you can just kind of tell us again, I guess just your thoughts on this really sad day.
Well, it is a sad day. It's a sad day for Detroit, our country, and the world. I mean, Aretha Franklin was the Queen of Soul, and talking to people on social media over the last several moments, I really come to the realization, and I'm sure that tens of millions of people are coming to that realization too, is that she really helped provide the soundtrack for our lives. And that might be a cliche, but in the case of Aretha Franklin, it's absolutely the truth.
Yeah, it absolutely is. You think of the breadth, the depth of her talents too. I know when Pavarotti was ill, she just jumped in, did that. We've seen her in the Blues Brothers.
Right.
I mean, it's incredible, her span of talent and that voice, unlike any other.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of talk about the movie, about Aretha Franklin's life and who would play the various parts. And Aretha had some real say-so in that. There are some people that she said, no, I don't necessarily want them playing me. There are other people that she said, yeah, that makes sense. Ken, you follow sort of the entertainment world and the historical world. I would imagine coming out of this are going to be all sorts of talented writers such as yourself who are going to want to write and produce interesting things about the life of Aretha Franklin.
Yeah, I think, Chuck, her life was obviously, she was a recording artist, a vocalist, a performer, but what I tend to look at also, being a lifelong Detroiter, is her role really in the civil rights movement. 50 years ago today, she was performing at the Southern Christian Leadership Conference's annual convention in Memphis, and that was, of course, several months after Dr. Martin Luther King was tragically assassinated in that same town, which ironically was Aretha Franklin's where her birthplace was in Memphis. She, along with her father and others, really, in my view, were civil rights leaders. And as an African American, particularly one whose hometown is Detroit, I mean that's really special. To me, it's almost as special, maybe equally as special as the great music that she produced over the years. And so I hope that when people write the story about Aretha Franklin, that they also write about the fact that she really was a freedom fighter at a time when America needed one.
Yeah, no doubt about it. She and her family were so engrossed in that civil rights fight, and we're so close to the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. That is an integral part of her history and her family's history.
Absolutely. I also think that what comes to mind is, Aretha Franklin moves here as a toddler, really. Reverend C.L. Franklin took a pastoralship at New Bethel Baptist Church, I believe in 1946. And so Aretha was really young when she came here to Detroit. And by the time she was 18, she was discovered by John Hammond at Columbia Records and became a recording artist right after that.
Yeah, and which clearly explains her closeness to Reverend Jesse Jackson, who went to see her yesterday. And every time Aretha gave a party in Detroit, Reverend Jackson was there. They had this bond and this relationship. So whether it was on an entertainment venue or it was a political venue, he was there because he was the youngest minister of that civil rights clan. Jesse was younger than Martin and the rest of them, but he was very much a key part of all of that, and so that relationship continued.
Absolutely. Ken Coleman. Yes, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your thoughts and your perspective on this sad day. We are going to head now to Aretha Franklin's church. Matthew Smith is live on Detroit's west side, where they are mourning our Detroit legend. Matt?
Yeah, this is kind of the start of it all, right? I mean, we know that Aretha Franklin was born in Memphis, but came here at such a young age, and it was her father and his connection to this church right here that really kind of cemented her legacy to Detroit. Yeah, she moved other places, but this was the home that she came back to and where she resided when it all came to an end. earlier today. Now, of course, we expect a whole lot of people to come out here, but I think that this connection to Aretha Franklin out here at New Bethel Baptist Church is really kind of the story that we've been focusing on for the past couple of days. If you guys don't remember, it was just about 1.5 days ago that we saw all these people come out here first thing in the early morning and celebrating Aretha Franklin's life, praying and hoping that she could hold on for just a little bit longer. We could run down all of these things. We could talk about the 18 Grammy Awards. We could talk about the millions upon millions of records sold, but at the end of the day, it's her connection to this community and the way that people feel about her. We've seen a lot of people rise to stardom from the city of Detroit because of Motown, but Aretha kind of bucked the trend. She was not one of those Motown people. She signed on with a different record and she did it her own way and did so many things. And it's just one of those things, if you're a Detroiter or you're from this area, anyone really from Michigan, you get that feeling when you're in front of Aretha Franklin, when you're in the audience hearing her sing. It's a different type of feel. You knew it was a legend. You always knew what she meant, not only to this region, not only to this city, but everybody around the entire area. We are starting to see some people trickle into the area, and we are going to be talking with them and what Aretha Franklin meant to them. But I think the words are being spread across the internet very quickly. Just moments ago, we saw somebody drive by, honk their horn, and shout out Aretha. It was just as simple as that, a smile. We've seen people tears. We've seen people crying. We're going to try to get those personal stories, because while she was a musician, while she was an artist, I think we can all agree that she stepped a lot more beyond that. And her story, her imprint on this community will not soon be forgotten. Now, we did, of course, learn that her death is a result of pancreatic cancer, dying at the age of 76, but I think we're going to be learning a lot more about her impact in the days ahead. So we're going to wrap things up here momentarily, but Anu, I know when you talk about Aretha, everybody has their own personal story. Mine, I remember talking about her with my parents and with my family members. 1987, that was the year she was elected in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, also the year I was born. So you kind of realize how far back she stretches, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's incredible to think the generational span that her talents and that her personality and her purpose really has affected so much. Matthew, so much. Thank you for that live report from New Bethel Baptist, of course, where Aretha Franklin's father was pastor, where she first started singing in the choir at age 14, and where she recorded her first album. I do want to pass along what we just got in. Motown Museum is going to be paying tribute to Aretha Franklin all this weekend long. They're going to be playing her songs at the museum August 17th, 18th, and 19th, saying that she was a trailblazer with her contributions to music. And they said while Aretha was never actually signed to Motown, to that label, she was indeed a part of the Motown family.
Yeah, and a lot of people probably don't even realize that she was off Atlantic and some other records, but she was never really a Motown artist. But because Motown was such a big thing here, people just assume that if you're a big star and you're African American and you came out of Detroit, you had to be with Motown. But she had wonderful relationships with the Motown artists and oftentimes performed with them as well, and the mutual respect between the two. Yeah. I think Norm Thrasher may be on the phone. Norm, are you on the phone?
Yes.
Norm
Yes,
Thrasher, part of Motown's easy transition from talking about the Motown Museum to talking about Norm Thrasher. Norm, your thoughts today?
Well, I'm very, very sad pertaining to Aretha. I've been knowing Aretha and her family since she was about 14 years old. You know, and we've been friends all of my life and all of hers. You know, but we'll all miss her very, very much.
Norm, do you have a favorite Aretha Franklin story? I mean, there have been so many of them because you've known her for so long, but does the one stand out more than the other?
Just the way that she used to say, "Hello, Norman." You know, yeah. It was just such a warm thought, a warm sound, you know, that you could always cherish the warmness that people convey over to you to show the inner love that they and respect that they have for you.
And Mr. Thrasher, Anu Prakash here. With your personal relationship with her, what is something that the rest of us who didn't know her the way you did would be perhaps surprised to know about her? What would you want people to know about the kind of woman she was?
That she was just a very kind, warm, understanding lady, you know, that understood life and people, you know, and I never saw her angry. You know, I always saw her smiling and talking warm and kind to everybody. So that kind of a person, to me, she is love and energy to anybody that she would meet, and she shared that with me.
Mr. Thrasher, she was also a perfectionist in terms of her craft. How did you see that manifest itself, whether she was practicing for a particular show or performing in itself?
That in her playing the piano, any note that she would hit on the piano, she could hit it with her voice. You know, any note that she would play, you know, when you hear a song and you hear a sound, you know, a note in your head, and you can reach that, that's perfection. And she had that.
You know, think about that voice, and you mentioned the piano, the fact that she learned to play that on her own.
Right.
Yes, yes, yes.
Wonderful talent. Wonderful talent.
And Mr. Thrasher, what would you say to all of the people who are just really sad today, thinking about the loss of the Queen?
Well, one of the things, you know, think about the love and the kindness that she had for people in the world. She sung for the world. She didn't sing for one nationality of people. Mm-hmm. She sung for the whole world. Anybody that had a problem, and she had a song to fit that particular problem. So anybody that would listen to Aretha, even when she sang Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound, that God has blessed everybody to hear her voice that will render tenderness to them in their lives. You know, from the church, you know, to the nightclub, to any place that she would be able to sing, even when the president anointed her with the Medal of Honor. You know, it was just wonderful.
What do you think she got out of entertaining others? I don't mean just on the stage, but she loved having people, whether it was in her home or if she held a particular event at the DAC or anywhere else in this town or other towns. It was all about the hospitality. It was down to even the food. She wanted to make sure that people enjoyed the entire experience. Is that your remembrance of her?
Yes, that's true. I remember the last birthday party that I went, Joe Frazier and Barry Holmes were there, and she treated us just like I was a movie star, like I was a boxer. You know, she treated me just as well as she treated everybody else. Everybody that she invited to her home, they were their home. They became their home while they were there. She was just a lovely, lovely, lovely person.
Absolutely.
Mr. Thrasher, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your thoughts today.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. God continue to bless you.
Thank you, and same to you.
Thank you, you as well. And Jennifer Ann Wilson is in the newsroom right now looking at some tweets from celebrities responding to this devastating loss. And I know, Jen, you know, for several days now, we've been hearing from so many people, fans, celebrities, just wanting Aretha Franklin to know that they were thinking of her, that they were praying for her, and such an outpouring of love for the Queen of Soul.
Oh, absolutely. So many memories being shared. I was just chatting with you about the last concert I saw, which was right here in Detroit last summer. Aretha Franklin performed, and there was so many fun moments. But one of the fun moments that I remember is there was a guy on a fire escape who was kind of dancing from a building nearby, near where the stage was, and she noticed him, and she waved at him and sort of had this moment where she kind of danced towards him, acknowledged him. It was a really cool moment, and as so many people have said, it is that way she had of really connecting with people that reached beyond even her incredible music. And so many people reacting on Twitter this morning. We have several tweets that I just want to share with you that I found, and there were so many more, just the outpouring of love and support. We'll start with Tim Cook, of course, the founder and CEO of Apple, tweets, "We mourn the passing of Aretha Franklin, the Queen of Soul. Her voice will keep lifting us through the music she gave the world. Our thoughts are with her family, her loved ones, and her fans everywhere. Take her hand, precious Lord, and leave her home." Ryan Seacrest tweets, "The American Idol family had the great privilege of working with the iconic Aretha Franklin for a special episode in Detroit. The world will miss her as she's left an indelible mark on our culture. Her artistry and music will move and inspire us forever. Rest in peace to the Queen of Soul." Lenny Kravitz tweets, "The Queen of Soul has left this earth to sit on her throne in heaven. how blessed we were to hear the best that God had to offer in her voice. Respect. John Legend tweets, "Salute to the Queen, the greatest vocalist I've ever known." Hashtag Aretha, and many, many prayers going out. We've got a tweet from John, Reverend Al Sharpton, who says he is deeply saddened by the passing of a beloved friend and Queen warrior Aretha Franklin. Her contributions are legendary, both personally and societally. We hope you take a pause today to remember the life of a beautiful soul. So many tweets, so many people sharing their thoughts. It is a sad day, but also a day of celebration of the incredible life she lived and the many, many lives she touched here in Metro Detroit, across the country, and around the world.
Jennifer, and you hit the right word when you talked about celebration. Knowing Aretha, that's what she would want today. Yeah. She wouldn't want people going around mourning her in a sad way. She would want them to celebrate what she was about and what she brought to this world, because she so very much believed in happiness and entertainment, and she had religion at the base of what she was all about. And she knew that she lived a wonderful life. She got to meet the kings and queens and the presidents and everyone, and then just the average person. All of them were important to Aretha. And when she got on that stage to perform, she didn't really care about your status in life. She just knew that she wanted you to leave that venue at the end of the night feeling as though you heard, if not the best, certainly one of the best entertainers in the world. And so I think she really would want people to celebrate what she's all about. And you can just imagine the number of people that are running around now looking for something special that Aretha may have signed for them or written a special note or something that they had from when they went to a concert from her. Not because the value has gone up, but the value in terms of having had a story attached to that you now have.
Without a doubt. Yeah. And our Kim Craig just spoke to Reverend Jesse Jackson. Of course, we know about Aretha Franklin's work with civil rights over the years. Let's listen into what he had to say.
Our hearts are heavy. I've known Aretha almost all of my life. Earth has lost a lot of music today. Truly the heavens rejoice. We thank her for her serving, for her singing, for her sharing, and for her caring so much.
Absolutely. What do you want people to remember about your friend?
A singer servant. In addition to being the talent of singing, I remember she sang before the Pope in Philadelphia not long ago. But she kept much singing for Albertina Walker, the Caravans, a small church in Chicago. She was a people person.
And what do you think people don't know about Aretha? Something that might surprise them? Anything about her personality or anything?
I think it's an open book. Aretha never left her church roots, never left her family roots. She never stopped sharing. People care that you have, but they care more that you share. They care that you know, but they care more that you share. And she never stopped caring and sharing. I remember that the most about her. Her singing speaks for herself. The caring, sharing person who could cook.
All right. Sir, thank you for your time. Thank you, folks. Thank you. And that's Reverend Jesse Jackson talking about his friend and a woman to all people, Aretha Franklin, on her passing. It's just a very heartfelt day for a lot of people here. We're standing outside of one of her homes here in downtown Detroit here. This is Riverfront Towers, where a lot of us members of the media have gathered. And a lot of people who love Aretha Franklin are inside talking to her family and to other loved ones here. Reverend Jackson just leaving here just a short time ago. And this is really touching a lot of people. I mean, Aretha Franklin, like Reverend Jackson said, never left her gospel roots. Her representative saying this morning that Aretha Franklin, who was 76 years old, passed away this morning at 9:50 a.m. here at her home. Her official cause of death due to advanced pancreatic cancer of the neuroendocrine type. and that was confirmed by Aretha Franklin's oncologist. But so many people sharing their thoughts and their love for Aretha Franklin from Detroit, and she never forgot that. She never forgot her love of Detroit and her love and her gospel roots. Back to you.
Yeah, so true, Kim. You know, she could have gone anywhere, moved anywhere, but she really embraced Detroit as her home and always continued to give back. I loved hearing from Reverend Jackson there about how, you know, she never left her church roots. And, you know, just to hear from people who knew her well also. She was a great cook.
Yeah, and Jesse hit it right when he said, and she was a good cook. And I'll tell you a funny story about that later.
Okay,
We'll go to
right.
Allie Hoxie
yeah.
first.
Allie Hoxie is live at the Motown Museum, where they're going to be paying tribute to the Queen of Soul. Allie?
Even though she's not known for Motown, she's known for her soul music. They do still plan on playing tribute to her this weekend, but first take a look behind me. You can see there's no memorial yet, but this has historically been a place where people come to lay flowers and pay their respects, and the Motown Museum knows that and wants to honor that. So what they're doing this weekend is they will be playing Aretha Franklin hits this weekend to pay tribute to the Queen of Soul and pay tribute to her music. They'll also be having a guest book inside the museum for people to sign and leave their condolences, and I'm sure that will be something that will be very healing for this community. Once people sign their condolences, they'll be able to take that book, and they plan on giving it to Aretha Franklin's family. And if you've ever been in this neighborhood before where Aretha is, you know that there's lots of people in this neighborhood that love her soul. Just a couple days ago, I ran into a woman here who said that she used to attend the church that she sang at, and she watched her sing, and she just said it was a phenomenal experience to be able to watch her sing, and that the whole community just knew that she was going to make it somewhere, and that she did. She's the famous Queen of Soul. So again, she will be honored here at the museum this weekend with music. And if you'd like to come and sign that guest book, you'll be able to do so. Reporting live from Motown, Allie Hoxie, 7 Action News.
Yeah, Allie, thank you so much. You can only imagine how many people will be out there to pay tribute and to honor her in so many ways. We do have a statement from the Recording Academy on Aretha Franklin's passing. They say that Aretha Franklin was an incomparable artist who came to be recognized as one of the most profound voices in music. Known universally as the Queen of Soul, she solidified her legendary status in the late 60s with chart-topping recordings that included Respect, A Natural Woman, and Think. And during her 6-decade career, 44 Grammy nominations, 18 Grammy Awards, and of course recognized by the Recording Academy on several occasions for her remarkable accomplishments as an artist, and they point out too as a philanthropist as well.
Yeah, she gave back. She gave back without a doubt. What a legacy. What a musical legacy.
It's incredible, right?
Yeah.
And of course, first female to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame too. I mean, the span of her talents just, it's incredible, the range that it had.
Oh no, and I can imagine they're over in Cleveland right now, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, trying to pull out whatever Aretha memorabilia that they have there and celebrate it right on Lake Erie there, without a doubt. But I teased earlier, and I'll tell you a funny story. Everybody knows, Aretha knows that she loved to cook. And I think the very first Christmas soiree that Trudy and I went to, and this was maybe 20 years or so ago, it was at her house. And at that time she was living in West Bloomfield. And the food was, I mean, it was soul food and everything galore. There were chitlins, and there were greens, there were collard greens, turnip greens, there was cornbread. It was all good. And so we were eating all this stuff, and at that particular one, she always had an entertainment group there to perform, and I think at that particular one was the Gap Band in her house. You know how many people get the Gap Band to come perform in your house? But she came around, and she would ask you, how are you doing? How did you enjoy everything? Did you like the food? And then I said, yeah, the food was really good. She said, well, I'm glad you enjoyed it. She said, because I stayed up all night cooking all this. And she wasn't lying. She was telling the truth.
She did it.
She was over that hot stove cooking chitlins.
I love
it. But she, and you would see her later on some of the national morning shows, with other famous chefs, getting her particular recipes of how she liked to fix individual meals and recipes. She was an extremely accomplished cook. She liked you eating her food, and she enjoyed eating the food as well.
Yeah, she loved
her
to
own
do
preparation.
It. What was it about her, in your experience, that you think may surprise people, or that you would really want people to know, who never had the opportunity to get to know her the way you did?
That she would always ask you how you are doing. It was like she cared about you individually. It wasn't all about her. She realized that you were coming there because you've been invited to her event. But she would always turn it inward and want to know how you're doing. And in my case, she would ask, how my father was doing when he was alive and those things. She just wanted that connection. She appreciated history, and particularly African American history and African American leaders. That was important because that's something she was raised with, that influence, that civil rights movement.
Yeah, without a doubt. And her music, her work, her entire life just transcended cultures and all across the globe. I want to share some of these tweets from some celebrities. Hugh Jackman tweeting, "One of the highlights of my career was singing with Aretha Franklin at the Tony Awards. It was an out-of-body experience for me. One of the greatest singers of all time. You will be missed by all." Now we've heard so many people echo
Tributes
those
going to
same
be coming
sentiments.
in all day long.
Tim Cook there, we mourn the passing of Aretha Franklin, the Queen of Soul. Her voice will keep lifting us through the music she gave the world. Our thoughts are with her family, her loved ones, and fans everywhere. Take her hand, precious Lord, and lead her home. Ryan Seacrest, the American Idol family, had the great privilege of working with the iconic Aretha Franklin for a special episode in Detroit. The world will miss her as she's left an indelible mark on our culture. Her artistry and music will move and inspire us forever. Rest in peace to the Queen of Soul. Lenny Kravitz, the Queen of Soul, has left this earth to sit on her throne in heaven. How blessed we were to hear the best that God had to offer in her voice. Respect. John Legend saying, "Salute to the Queen, the greatest vocalist I've ever known." Also, Reverend Al Sharpton saying, "Deeply saddened by the passing of a beloved friend and Queen warrior Aretha Franklin. Her contributions are legendary both personally and societally. We hope you take a pause today to remember the life of a beautiful soul." Shonda Rhimes, remember when she stepped in last minute for Pavarotti at the Grammys? I remember this. And just shook us all to our core and made us question the universe by singing Nessun Dorma. We played that in the newsroom the other day, and I just had chills. I mean, she stepped in and she handled it. And here's a live picture at Hitsville. Of course, the Motown Museum will be paying tribute to the Queen of Soul, Aretha Franklin. I know we were talking about a lot of people may think that she, signed with Motown. She wasn't part of Motown in that way, but in every other way, with every fiber, she was part of course, our city.
No doubt about it, and I would guess that in a very soon period of time, we're going to see some kind of statement from Berry Gordy, of course, who founded Motown, because of the relationship that he had and the respect that he had for her talent and all that she represented to the musical world. Aretha, I'm trying to think now about the tribute and all the people that are obviously involved now in trying to put together this type of tribute to her. And of course, it takes me back to Rosa Parks, who was probably the last really iconic figure in this town that commanded that type of international respect and attention. And when you put together these type of tributes for them, so I can guarantee you there's some war rooms going on right now trying to figure out
they're working hard.
Where's it going to be and how are we going to accommodate people that will be coming in from around the world, for her tribute.
The father of one of our Channel 7 engineers, Derek Davis, played music with Aretha Franklin, and he's in the newsroom to tell us more about this. What an incredible moment for him, Derek.
Yes. First of all, I want to give my condolences to the Franklin family. As a young man, I had the opportunity to actually witness her in the studios as a kid many times. My dad, Maurice Davis, was a local trumpet player, studio musician for Motown, played with a lot of the big bands, and he played behind Aretha, for 30 years. He also had the opportunity, a lot of times he booked the wind section for her when she did local concerts and stuff. So, I had to share my memories about when I, as a kid going in the studios and actually seeing her work. She, like everyone said, she was a perfectionist. I must have been around 8, 9, 10 years old. And even as an adult, I had the opportunity to see her once in the studio recording some Christmas songs. And wow, what a person. Very sweet, always pleasant. And, she's going to be missed. Definitely going to be missed in this town.
Yeah, what an incredible moment for you, especially as a child, to be able to hear that. And we've been hearing that from so many people who had the honor and the privilege of knowing her well, like you did, Chuck, but saying, she never got angry. She was always humble, always caring about somebody else and wanting to listen.
Yeah, and that has to be a unique experience, Derek, because you got a chance to see her actually working at her craft. Most of us see it up when she's up on stage and she has put all the hard work and preparation into getting ready for that particular performance. But you got a chance to see her when she was trying to figure out, okay, how am I going to sing this particular song, and how are the musicians going to play off of it as well?
I mean, can you imagine being a child and be able to witness that? Derek, thank you for that perspective and sharing those thoughts with us. We do want to head back to Aretha Franklin's church, New Bethel Baptist. Matthew Smith is live on the city's west side where they are mourning this Detroit legend. Matt?
Yes, slowly but surely we are seeing people work their way down here to New Bethel Baptist Church. And I mean, this is the passing of a legend. It's hard not to come here and pay respect to Aretha Franklin. And this is something that unfortunately we've been praying and hoping and holding off for, wanting to not see this happen. But ultimately, 76 years old, the end came for Aretha Franklin after a long battle with pancreatic cancer. Now, we've been up here at her church, and people who typically come to this church have been stopping by, kind of talking a little bit about what Aretha Franklin means to them. We talk so often about her career as a musician, but really, it seems like some people just had that feeling when she walked into a room. And the love really comes from a place of not just her music, but also the idea that she gave back. Now, this church right here, New Bethel Baptist Church, obviously we all know the history behind it, how she got her start here. This was a gospel singer turned mainstream, and she really did roll with the punches and move along with music. She changed with the different genres year to year, but the roots were always here at New Bethel Baptist Church, and Aretha knew that. She came back here, she performed, she brought other people back here to perform at this church. So those who stayed here, those who attended here, really got to know and love that family of musicians. And I had a chance to talk with one woman earlier. She came back to this church, and she came here earlier today because she woke up, heard the news, and then thought to herself, I have so many pictures of Aretha Franklin from when she performed here. In fact, this woman, she went by the name Mrs. Street. She tells me that she had a lot of pictures because it was a special moment when she met Aretha Franklin. Her special needs daughter, 14 at the time, had an album that she wanted signed by Aretha Franklin, and it was right here that it happened. Take a listen.
Everybody here in Detroit is going to miss her very much. She's so special to us, even to the pastor here at the church. She grew up here. Her father grew up here. I mean, she done touched so many people.
And it's funny just listening to that, her talking about the Queen of Soul, her talking about what her legacy meant to her individually, more than a musician. We keep coming back to that because Aretha was more than just a regular person. She kind of had that persona that filled a room. Anybody who attended one of her concerts know what it was like to be there. But I'm laughing because as we drove by, heard 2 more cars go by listening to Aretha. It's kind of like that memorial, that living memorial that's happening as we speak. It's unfolding right in front of us on this sad, sad day. We actually listened to one man, Patrick. He came over here just a little bit ago, opened all his doors, and just blasted his music at the top as loud as it goes to a natural woman. And I had to pull him aside and ask him why he did it and what he was thinking about right now. I want you to hear from him as well.
I'm so emotional right now.
for not to know her, but just feel her through her music. And she's the queen. It's really not much more to say.
To be here right now and to hear her words outside of this church, what's that feel like?
I mean, you know, it's great knowing where she come from. She's a Detroiter. I'm a Detroiter, and to see someone so special like that and as powerful as she's around the world feel this, and like I'm feeling. And like I said, she's just the queen.
Yeah, I think it's as simple as that. She was the queen. When you say that, it sounds so simplistic. It's one sentence, but it means so much, and it means different things to different people. And that's why we're going to be tracking the latest on this Aretha Franklin story and what she meant to everyone around this city and really around the country, as we've seen people react all across the globe in just the last half hour. In fact, I hear that we're going to hook up with Kim Craig right now. She's tracking the latest. And Kim, what are people saying out there?
Well, we just talked to Reverend Jesse Jackson outside Aretha's home here in downtown Detroit, and so many people, like you said, across the globe remembering the Queen of Soul. And her publicist released a statement shortly after her death this morning. And the last part of it said, "We have been deeply touched by the incredible outpouring of love and support we have received from close friends, supporters, and fans all around the world. They say thank you for your compassion and prayers. We have felt your love for Aretha, and it brings us comfort to know that her legacy will live on. As we grieve, we ask for your respect and privacy during this difficult time." And they end with saying that funeral arrangements will be announced in the coming days. Reporting live in downtown Detroit, Kimberly Craig, back to you.
Kim, thank you so much. During Kim's live shot there, we saw the star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. You could see that people have already been leaving flowers. You heard in Matt's live shot there, that gentleman just playing her music, and just to hear that voice. I think what you said earlier, you knew her, you know that you feel like she would want us to celebrate her life, what she brought to us, and not be sad?
She would, and we're going to see the appropriate tributes roll out. I can guarantee you the entertainment tonight and all of the other national shows, if they don't lead with Aretha Franklin, it's going to be very close to the top, and everybody will have their particular bent on what her life meant to not just this country, but to the world. She was an international entertainer and internationally respected. You know, I was just very, very fortunate that Trudy and I could be just a small part of enjoying some of her legacy here in Detroit. And I'm glad that I had the good sense when her very first Christmas soiree invitation came in to keep it. And each year that they would come in, it was special. I mean, you'd have to see them. They were elaborate, they were intricate, they were Aretha.
They were Aretha.
And it's a nice keepsake to have to remember what she was all about. But we're just very fortunate that we can say she was a Detroiter and she represents this great city.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us. We will have continuing coverage on Action News at noon, of course, throughout the day, and also on WXYZ.com. Again, Aretha Franklin passing away at 76 years old.
That this is just an affront to the rule of law, that this is not what this country stands for. And these are people that have been practicing immigration law for 20 years. And